Hi, I'm Jason Levine. Today on Make It, it's a true bromance. I got to sit down with cult hero and editor extraordinaire Vashi Nedomansky. He's worked on movies such as Deadpool, Gone Girl, Six Below, and Sharknado 2, and what he's done for the industry in terms of sharing his knowledge of filmmaking and post-production is unprecedented. Right now on Make It. Well, Vashi, thank you so much for joining me. It is super awesome to have you here. It's been a while since we've actually had time to spend together.
Correct. No, thank you for having me. No, we always see each other at all these festivals and events and stuff. We never get to talk like human beings.
Right, like human beings.
Can we do that today?
So we're going to do that today.
Okay,
and
perfect.
in fact, we're not going to talk software. We're not going to talk process per se. But I thought it would be interesting for a lot of our viewers because, again, anyone who is kind of following Premiere and our Adobe story and certainly things like Deadpool. I mean, you've been everywhere. You've done everything. You've been a cult hero, but you have a very wide array of stuff that you've done even before getting into video, before getting into technology. I thought maybe you could kind of take us back through a bit of your history of kind of how you got to where you are and where you started.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that because I have a lot of history now, a lot of amazing projects I've been lucky enough to work on. But I was born in Czechoslovakia, in communist country. My parents defected when I was 4 years old, and luckily they took me with them.
Right.
And so we went across, and my dad played in the National Hockey League. That was the reason we defected. He was the first player to play in the NHL as a defector from a communist country.
Right.
So I grew up in Toronto and Detroit, and I played hockey as well professionally for 10 years. And the whole time I was doing that, I was always filming stuff with cameras and editing from VCR to VCR, like other editors do, growing up, that you accidentally stumble across this method that you can just share stuff between the decks. The way I got my camera was my dad was the first star of a game one night. And as the first star, he got this huge Panasonic shoulder mount camera and another VCR deck that you put on your shoulder.
That's right, the shoulder pack deck.
The battery would last about an hour, and then the whole thing weighed like 50 pounds. So he came home, he said, "Here, do something with this." And I literally had to figure out how to work a camera, do all that stuff. And I ended up shooting like family trips, family events, and would have to edit from one VCR to another. At the age of 12, I just started doing this naturally, organically, without thinking about it. And I was lucky enough to, in school, we had a book report, and I said, can I just like shoot the actual book report, like shoot a film instead of write a book report? And the teachers were progressive enough to say, yeah. So I cast like my schoolmates, had them come over to the house. We shot a film in the backyard. I edited it like that. And then the best part was when you showed that to the class, the response of like people laughing or chuckling or groaning or
and just
whatever.
seeing themselves on a screen, for that matter.
Yes. And that response like just hooked me. Like I knew like I had to be involved in filmmaking at some level. So when I played professionally for 10 years, I'm writing scripts, I'm shooting short films on the side, I'm on these long bus rides for 12 hours. I get to write something.
What do you do? You
play
write
cards,
stuff.
you do other stuff, but I would write scripts and whatnot. So I've been doing that for a long time. So when I entered the field of professional filmmaking in like 2000, basically, I knew I was ready because I had a lot of experience. And most people don't know that. They're like, who's Vashi or what's this? Oh, he does this and that. But I had been prepping my whole life, luckily, for that.
So now, I mean, what's interesting too is, again, most recently, we've got Six Below, and we had you at NAB, the National Association of Broadcasters Convention. You're talking about this amazing film, 6K, edited in 6K.
Natively, the first film ever, the whole film was shot at Red 6K, and I edited the whole thing with that native full 6K Red file. No transcoding, no proxies or anything. I'm just editing the main file. We were shooting in the mountains above Sundance in Utah, and the thing was, when the footage came back in, I had to look at it right away, and if something was missing, or I needed to tell Scott, the director, you need to grab the shot, I need to see that right away. I couldn't wait that extra day and a half for them to transcode it. We would have lost location. So it was important using technology to stay ahead of the production. And that was the only way we could have done it, using the raw files. So
I was going to touch upon your blog, Vashi Visuals, which has been around now
5 years now?
5 years.
Fifth year.
Your sort of initial blog posts were how to do it on a lower budget, how to just create things that looked good. I thought maybe you could kind of talk about how you got into blogging.
You can be creative without having to spend a lot of money. It's all up here, and it's all pre-planning, and it's using what gear you have at hand and available. And the power of post, where you can do so much in post, where if you capture a clean image, you can always change something later, you can prep for certain things. And that was like my love affair with like Adobe Creative Suite and using After Effects and Audition, all those things. So I just wanted to share my experiences. And the one thing about my blog post and my whole website is anything I blog about, I do not have an agenda. I have no one to answer to.
Right.
I have no advertising, no nothing. I just want to share shit that I really enjoy, stuff that I love, and hopefully someone finds it interesting.
Because that was also right around the time of kind of the DSLR boom, and really when better cameras and more cinematic looks were becoming more accessible. And here you had someone who was giving this mantra that you don't need this area. I mean, they're great, but you can do this with what you have. And if you understand clean image, clean shot, good lighting,
yes.
If it means investing a bit more time or space. And I remember you had all these very sort of, this can work.
Right.
You just follow these kind of simple things, and you can make it look like a bigger production.
Oh, totally.
It went crazy.
Yeah, one of my biggest blog posts, the first one that I actually did for Shane Hurlbut, was the 7 tips for color correction.
Right.
And it's just so simple. But what I would do is I'd break everything down, the 7 tips, and like the order of operations of how you actually approach something, what do you color first? When do you remove noise? When do you add grain? When do you do all these things? Once you have like an actual recipe for how to get the best image, you can apply that, and anyone could.
Right.
And what I did was also, all the projects and short films I was working on, I would include stills of it actually before and after, and you could see the difference, and people really, really responded to it. It was just insanity. And also making comments about filmmaking in general, a lot of editorial stuff, digging deep into the analytics of filmmaking, if you would,
well,
which is interesting.
I wanted to touch upon this because this was something that really spoke to me, and I remember you had a post and also a lot of tweets about sort of shot length, and and you had this one particular blog about just how it's evolved over the years, and looking at sort of analyzing different directors. And we were talking the other day about Spielberg, and the average length of his shots is 8 seconds.
8 seconds, like over his whole career.
Right, and I think you had Woody Allen is like
12
to 14, and then Michael Bay,
2 seconds, like which is you can see it on the screen.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with like having short average shot lengths or long. It's what's happening, the content over the long time.
Right.
Like Michael Bay's films, like no matter what you say, they're technically so impressive. You may not like the story or whatever, but if everyone could do that, then there'd be a whole bunch of Michael Bays. There's not. There's one. It's so hard to do.
Right, and still do it.
And Spielberg, if you got to linger on a shot for 8 seconds or 10 seconds, if set design, the actors, the colors, the costume, if all of that is not functioning at the highest level,
you'll lose
you
people.
Just, what's going on? You just don't even care about it. That has nothing to do with what camera they're using, what you're editing on. No, it's the craft of filmmaking and storytelling, which supersedes everything.
Let's talk about Sharknado too, because this is really, you're a cult hero because of this movie.
Oh, it was a blast. I asked to do it. I had just finished some other features and whatnot, and I was working at Bandito Brothers for 5 years as their lead editor, cutting commercials, cutting documentaries, cutting all sorts of stuff, high-end stuff, Super Bowl spots.
Right.
And then I'd seen Sharknado 1, and my whole thing was I've always wanted to cut a shark movie. When I came over from Czechoslovakia, the first movie I saw was Jaws. So I was like 4 years old in the back of a convertible VW Bug with my parents at a drive-in, right? Totally. So we're watching it, and the last half hour, I was under a blanket screaming, just screaming, couldn't take it. It was just so scary to me. As if I didn't speak English, but I knew what was going on. That shark's going to eat everybody. Yeah. So when this movie number 1 came out, I knew the director and I knew some of the people at Asylum. So I cold called my friend who was one of the owners, and I said, listen, I'm cutting Sharknado 2. That's not what you usually do. That's not advice for anyone. So 2 months later, I'm like, well, that was a weird attempt at doing something. I got a call from the guy, and he said, do you still want to cut it? I'm like, absolutely. I'd love to cut Sharknado 2. And it turned out to be amazing, like the experience, the film, and the knowledge that I garnered from that.
It was just huge. I mean, it was just, it was everywhere.
Right.
Everybody was aware of this movie.
I've cut a lot of stuff. If I say, oh, I cut this documentary, or I cut that film, they're like, great. And I say, oh, I cut Sharknado 2. They light up.
And again, Deadpool, one of the biggest openings ever. A game changer in superhero films that you were not only an integral part of, but someone who, again, shared the process beyond that direction staff, beyond the staff who made that. Mm-hmm. How do you stay humble in all of this and still be so accessible and willing and wanting to share?
I think it's just like the way I live my life and the way I see things. And I just think anything I'm involved with, I want to do my best, but I want to learn something from everything. I will screw up. I'll make mistakes. I'll share that as well. But I think as a person, I just try... I want to make myself happy first. If I'm not happy, then I'm sure shit not going to make the people around me happy.
Leading up to Deadpool and how you sort of got involved with that, it actually began with bringing you in sort of as a consultant to explain the workflow.
So Tim Miller's like, I'd love to try Adobe Premiere and After Effects, not because of what they are, but just because they're integrated, and he was familiar with it.
Right.
And the team that they had was an Avid team, and that they were completely familiar that this is the industry standard at that time for these high-level films. And my job is to go in and say, well, I could suggest this, I could show you what could be possible. It's up to you guys. Again, I'm not, I have no
Not
association
selling, right,
with
you-
Adobe.
right.
I'm an editor going, I've done this already successfully.
Right.
So they gave it a shot and it worked. And once it starts working and they're already cutting, and day one, the lead editor I trained, day one he was cutting. By the end of the day, he's like, oh yeah, I'm fine. I'm like, great. And like with Fincher, Tim Miller and Deadpool gave back to the community so many new tips and tricks that I got to share, that I got to learn by watching them, and I get to share that. That's what's amazing. Like the whole filmmaking community, no one ever does it the same way. Every production I've worked on, be it my own or someone else's, I'm learning stuff and I'm banking that and then I'm sharing that.
Right.
Because
and that's huge, right? And that's really that's kind of part of the art too. Is that
of course.
I mean, I think some of that gets lost today, where you want to create new things, but in order to keep creating new things, some of that has to be passed on.
What I think is really interesting is that right now editors or editorial or post-production is thought of like hardware and creativity. Like those are the two things. You have to be creative and you have to have like really good machines. What they're missing, which is almost probably more important, is communication with everyone, because if you start cutting as an editor in the wrong direction, you're wasting time. You're thinking, oh, this is what they want. You have to be on the same page as everyone. I always sit with my director before I start a film, and I make sure I'm so inside his or her brain in terms of what they want, so I can deliver that. That's my job. As a communicator, I have to be that and organized. Yeah. If you're not organized, you're just flailing and you're creating, but like, what's your goal? You have to funnel it down to something that's actually working.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point too, that it's not only the communication, but it's also the people that you're associating with when you commit to a particular job. You know, I mean, I'm sure money's been a factor in some cases, but ultimately, can you work with these people? Can we actually see eye to eye?
Oh yeah.
Or not, but move.
Oh my God! If you don't have respect for the people you're working with on a feature film, if you're on it for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, if you have to work with an asshole, you're not going to. That's a bad choice. You've done that to yourself. And I've made that mistake. I've taken on jobs that I thought would be good, but I had that burning feeling that something was off and weird, and I paid the price. I'm on a project for 9 months, and it's miserable time. So we learn from that, though.
That's right. Well, and and I think part of that too is trusting the people you work with and kind of having that rapport. And I was going to say that I think I'm also fortunate to be able to tell people that we've worked together.
We have.
In fact, our first meeting, our first actual together moment was on a production where the whole time we actually hadn't met in person.
Right.
It was all done via email, a couple phone calls.
Yep.
And
a lot of pre-production.
Yeah, right. And it was trust. You didn't know who I was. I mean, maybe.
I knew of you.
Yeah.
You knew of me.
That's right. We knew each other.
We had our online personas or
That's
something.
Right.
That's what we knew.
That's right. Online personas only.
Yeah.
So for the viewers, part of this was what they now can see as the Welcome to Creative Cloud snippet that I showed at Max a couple of years ago.
The launch of the Creative Cloud.
The launch of Creative Cloud, in fact. But this was part of a much longer short film that you created internally here. I was this musical entertainer in this film, dressed in my best 70s garb, hirsute and all. And it was just this trust. From the very first moment we spoke, I said, okay, you said, okay, we want this. Okay, great, I'll do that. What do you want for music? Well, we need you to remake it this way in a 70s style. And I think I actually said, oh, like Fender Rhodes electric piano? Yes, exactly.
Yeah, we spoke the same language. And
we were doing what we're doing right now. We were just finishing each other's sentences.
Right. And if we're looking at the photo, if people are seeing it, like I had to go to all these costume stores. I would try the outfit on, and we'd take photos of it to send to you. So I'm wearing it, and I'm posing like you. I'm like, he would be probably going like this, and is his chest hair going to be shooting out like this, or how many buttons?
Yes.
And so that was such an amazing process to be able to do all that without physically knowing you yet, and then coming into the room and to tell everyone, we shot all of this in this room.
In this room.
In this room here.
In one take.
In one take, one full long take.
One full long take,
twice,
and then twice.
And post, again, so much was done in post, and it really worked out, and I wish we could share more than that, but that's a great representation of how amazing we both are.
Dude, I mean, and honestly, it was a dream realized, because, and you know this is true. I'm going to say this, people won't believe me, but you're an inspiration to so many, and we're just so grateful that you're in the family here, but that you came to make it today.
That means the world to me, and like this is all I've ever wanted to do, and to be able to surround myself with amazing people like yourself makes everything worthwhile. Like if it wasn't for people like you, I would just be miserable, and I would just be fighting the system and everything else. So you make it a dream.
Well,
So please,
dude,
you know
right,
that.
right back at you. And honestly, I can't wait. So what's next? I mean, now that you're sort of wrapping Six Below,
Six
I know
Below is wrapping up.
you're working on a documentary as well.
Working on a documentary about my father because he was the first player, and I was part of that process. So again, there's only one time everyone's the first. In every sport, something happens or some magical thing happens. And we escaped from a communist country, came to North America, get fish out of water. There's so many things that happen, and it's his. And my dad's such a humble guy. If you think I'm humble, he doesn't even say anything.
Right.
And so he's never told his story, and I'm his son, and I'm learning things today that I've never known about my entire life. So I just think it's a story that needs to be told, and I'm working on that. And I have a couple other feature films coming up later this year, and another one that I'm directing. So the plate is full, and I'm just trying to balance my time.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest challenge I think that all creatives and filmmakers have is budgeting your time for yourself, your projects, your family. That's something I'm still working on.
Yeah,
it's really hard.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to get better.
Dude, I'm going to follow your lead, man, and I know I'm not alone when I say can't wait to see what the next product is that we can actually watch and engage with and really learn something from, and just continue to learn more from your blog, from your words, and from your very handsome face.
You're too kind.
No,
you
dude.
are just a spectacular beast of a man. And I love you, and you know that.
I love you
that.
too.
Okay.
So, thank you so much. Always great to have you. Great to see you. And be sure to tune in each week on Make It, where we showcase incredible creatives telling their amazing stories, the incredible highs and the very dark,
horrifying lows.
Horrifying lows. You can find it here on the Creative Cloud YouTube channel. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Vashi. And we will see you again next time.